One dark night in 1994, April the 14th, the clock had just struck 10. It was a Friday, one I would never forget. I was face down, arms handcuffed behind my back, and two burly police officers, they were pinning me to the floor, surrounded by the drug squad, my special onboard escort in my very own Mariah van. All I could hear were the elated, celebrating screams. We've got a big score here. You're going down for 10 years. The hoots and the hollers of these celebrating coppers were only drowned out by the noise of the flashing siren. As I was led away to my first night in the prison cell, they thought they'd landed one of Liverpool's major drug dealers, and they didn't mind letting me know. Where did it all go wrong? More importantly, where did it all begin? I was born in 1973, named Kevin Coburn, but spelt Cockburn. I trust you can appreciate the surnames go. This one was very character building. In the 80s, I thought there was a season of respite whereby Coburnsport had become a popular tipple, and whilst I had little interest in this throat charmer, it was heavily advertised on television. Why am I telling you this? My surname, as is this tipple, spelt as described but pronounced Coburn. Whilst this advert finally gave my protest "it's not Cockburn" some credibility, this was far from the reality. It started when I was 11. I would dread every new academic year in senior school, as my classmates had reached an age where the male anatomy, most notably the first syllable of my name, had become the focus of their amusement. The same was the bane of my life and the start of something that still today rears its awkward, unassuming head. The CK is silent. Spelt Cockburn, but pronounced Coburn. I protest. Let me take you back to school. The start of each year, usually a new form teacher who would run through the register, and it would be the usual and go as follows: Adams, here. Bentley, here. And then me. As those four letters in the form of a word left the teacher's lips, I would be praying that their favourite tipple was port, but no. Cockburn. Cue the laughter. Intermittent shouts of, "You can get cream for that." It didn't leave me as an adult. I would dread the doctors, particularly as my doctor's waiting room had a tannoy for extra effect. I'm sure they only used it when I turned up. The inevitability of listening for the receptionist to holler out "Cockburn" to room 7 to a full, wide-eared waiting room. It was like waiting for the second coming. It's inevitable, and everyone's going to know about it. As this pending announcement would play out in my mind, I wondered, should I pretend I have a heavy limp to ensure the onlooking waiting room knew it was my second name, not my ailment? It would come as no surprise if several of the more of the waiting men stood up when my name was called out. Consequently, I had to be on death's door to get me in a doctor's waiting room. Can you imagine the strange looks experienced this in the dentist waiting room? The momentary look of confusion on the faces of the waiting lady patients, wondering whether they'd actually arrived in the gynecologist with toothache. What continues to be pure joy is sharing my details to the listener on the telephone. They'd ask me my name and I'd say Coburn, but I am more often than not always asked to spell it out. COCKBURN, which spells nothing like the sound of the name I've just given. So without fail, the listener would ask me to repeat, as if I got my own name wrong. If once was not enough humiliation, so for fun, I now leave a pause after the COCK before giving them the burn. The final insult. It took 22 years for my wife to agree to marry me and take the plunge to become Mrs. Cockburn. There is a silver lining. I am father to 3 daughters, and when they marry, that name leaves my lineage to be uttered and no more. My naming ceremony was a memorable one, which my dad would recount, often to my embarrassment and for the benefit of the listening audience, who would fall about him in rapturous laughter as he unravelled this story. In short, I was being baptised by a supposed holy man, known to the family, in the bath at home, no less, and without a stitch on. As he lowered me into the bath water, one hand cupping my head and one hand on my behind, it soon became apparent I had something waiting for him in my departure lounge, which needed to board. And upon announcing I baptised, he was interrupted. I unloaded. My brown tiger flew out of its cage, and this cult leader was now elbow deep. It was as if he'd pulled his arm out of a cow. Let's get serious for a moment. This wasn't just a naming ceremony. I really was born sick, stained with evil. The evil of the world, the spawn of Lucifer, a baby who was hellbound. The bathwater was the bleach to disinfect my contaminated skin and purge my demonic soul, submerged long enough to choke the evil out of me, but not too long so I would not drown. The moment my cleansed body was released and exorcised from this wet grave, it was official. I had been reborn into a cult. When I started school, it was at this point I began to feel like a cult kid. Most notably in the juniors. I was never allowed to eat my meals with worldly children or eat food cooked by worldly people. Because I had no access to a television, it was very difficult to relate to other children. One of my lasting memories was the school assembly. Those were the days when God and the Bible and Jesus were allowed into mainstream schools. And I recall overhearing the hymn, Morning Has Broken. But even though it was to do with the very same Bible the cult took so literally, I was not allowed to go into this assembly service. Every morning I would always sit on my own outside, and as I sat there, the streams of pupils entering the assembly hall would walk past me, and they'd stare, curious. Why was I the only kid who had to stay outside? Right there and then, I knew I was different. The odd one out. A target for bullies. This was the start of what became deep-rooted insecurities and feelings of utter loneliness, fear and anxiety, which became my normal, comfortably numb, in a busy place, hiding in plain sight. Later seeking comfort in a hellish existence, the lifestyle I rebounded into, or was I catapulted? Either way, it took me to the edge, the point of no return. A place later I needed saving from. This is what happened.